A very, very happy Monday to you today. I hope you are all doing very, very well on this first day of the week. And I hope that you are ready for a little bit of stamping fun today. My name is Sara, and I'm really excited to be joining you and the rest of the Altenew crew here today for tonight's live. So, a big welcome to everyone who is joining us today. Thank you so much. It's always wonderful to have you here. So, I have some really fun stamping, some stenciling, a little bit of die cutting, a couple of different techniques to share with you. And I called this one collection, four ways. So I've got four different cards that I want to show you, and we'll kind of talk about how to put the parts and pieces together for those. Hi, Cece. It's nice to see you pop in. Hi, Elizabeth, who's saying hello from Utah. Hello to you. Hope you are doing well, both of you, everybody who's jumping in. We do have the lovely Hannah with us tonight as the Altenew moderator. So she will be also joining us, probably already here. And she may even beat me to letting you guys know, as you probably already know, that if you share today's live while we're live, you can be in for a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store. Hi, Tracy. Hi, Jeanette. Hi, Jay. Hi, Christine and Patricia and the lovely Sue. See all these names flying by. Jennifer. And let's see, Stacy is there. Lovely, lovely to see some favorite names and some new names in there. So thank you so much for joining me today. So one collection, four ways. I'll run through the various parts and pieces that I am using tonight, and then I'll show you some of the projects that I've done, and then we'll just jump right into the demonstration. So hello to everybody who is joining us. There, she caught up with me. I think I beat her to it this time. Normally, the moderator always beats me to it to tell you guys about sharing while we are live, and you can be in for a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store. So the supplies that I'm using today are not new. They're not brand new, but they're quickly becoming some of the favorites in my collection. And I've had these, I think these were released last year in 2022. And I always like to go back through, I mean, I love all the new stuff, don't get me wrong, but I also love to go back through some of my stash and pull out some things that I may have used once or twice, or maybe have used a whole bunch of times, but that was in the past, and get them out again. And so this is the Always Be Kind stamp set. So you got this beautiful bluebell here, nice tall image, really makes a great card focal. You also have the nice large Be Kind sentiment on here. And then all of these little sentiments in here can be used in conjunction with the Be Kind. So for example, it says, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. You could also do be kind and the world will thank you. That's another of the sentiments. There's it matters. There is no matter how small, it is never wasted. So some really lovely sentiments in here and just some really beautiful options that you can do. I think this is great for a card for encouragement, to say thank you. Just a really, really nice, versatile design. So of course, when you've got a beautiful outline image like this, probably the first thing you think is, I'll grab my markers, I'll grab my alcohol markers or watercolors and to color it in. And you absolutely can do that. And I'll show you, that'll be one of my four ways today. You can also combine it with the stencil that goes along, which I know this looks a little strange, a little hard to see. But what this will do, if you look on the back of the package, is you can do some layering with the stencil to create a colored in effect using lots of different dye-based inks. So I will share that technique with you, and then a twist on that technique. And then the third element in the collection is the die set. So this is Be Kind 2 times, which you can layer up. Actually, I've got a piece in here that I did before, so that you have your main section and then you have kind of like a shadow behind it. And you can see in proportion to my hand, it's a nice big size. So you can use this with the stamps. So you could incorporate that with some of the sentiments on here, or you can use it with the large Be Kind, or you can use it just on its own. So lots of things that you can do with those. So those are the three, hang on, those are the three things that I'm going to be using today. This is the collection. So when I say 4 ways, 1 collection, this is the collection. One other thing that I'm going to use is the Classic Beauty stamp set. This is another one that I have in my stash. I have a lot of floral images from Altenew because I love them so much. And this is one that I'm not going to be using the flowers in this one, not tonight, maybe another time. But I am going to use the sentiments on here. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I'm working on a card, I forget that I can mix and match the sentiments from one stamp set with another one. So even though they're not designed to go together, the script is so classic and the sentiments are just so beautiful that you can really easily mix and match them with lots of other stamp sets. So sometimes I look in my stash and I think this is what I see is the flower part. And I'm like, oh no, I need a sentiment. And I forget that I can pull the sentiments from here too. So that's just a little reminder for me. So that is another set that we're going to be using today. So I'll just whiz through some of the projects today and then we will get into the demo. So this is what you can create if you're doing your coloring with your stencil. Then if you do not do the outline stamping, just the stenciling, you can create this really pretty soft effect. You can also do some coloring in. Now you could use your water brush markers, your artist markers, alcohol markers. In this case, I used watercolors. So we'll take a look at that. That's with some embossing. And you can also forego the flower entirely and just use that Be Kind and mix and match your sentiments on here. So those are my 4 ways with 1 collection. So I figured what I would do now that I've been chattering away, is turn down my camera and we can take a look at some demos. So I've been talking so much, I haven't been reading the comments, so I'll have a chance to look at that just a second here. Okay, so there you can see my work surface. Oh, Sue, Central New Jersey, great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Yeah, I've actually, so I live in Germany and last month was a school holiday and my family and I went back to Oregon for a couple of weeks. So I was out of town, out of the country for a while, but I'm back and I've got another live later at the end of this month too. All right, so let's get started. I figure we can start with this card project to begin with. So I'm going to move these guys out of the way and talk a little bit about how to create this look and what we will need to have. I can get out of the way some of the things we don't need to have. So I'm going to start, of course, with my stamp, and I'm going to pull this guy off. I've already got it ready to go on my MISTI, and stamp this with my favorite obsidian black. And then I'm going to do my coloring in here, and I'm going to be using some of my new inks. And this one is the Woodland Escape. So these are dye inks. This is an important part. And this one contains the pink sand. It's got the dusty rose, toasted mauve, and then also redwood. So I'm going to be using these 3 colors in here. And I need to have my stencils on hand too. So I've got my stamp set ready to go. And I'm just going to ink this up with my obsidian, and then we'll get to going. So Tracy, I think you had a question about who you would give a card to that says Be Kind. Her comment was is it someone who isn't? That might be a good idea, Tracy, but I won't encourage anything like that. I guess what I'm thinking of using this for is in combination with all of the other sentiments on that same stamp set. So, for example, the one where it says, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. Um, I'm part of a local group here in town, and we do a lot of volunteer work. And I think I'm one of the coordinators for this volunteer work that we do. And I think it's a really nice idea to have maybe as a thank you to the people who are doing volunteer work. That kind of thing I think would be totally appropriate. Some of the other sentiments on here, the world will thank you. It's cool to be kind, for example. No matter how small it is, never wasted. I always think it's like a good kind of thank you for being kind. So that's how I would use it. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so I've got my stamped flower in here ready to go. And for this one, I'm going to be using these, as I mentioned, these first 3 inks on here. So I'm going to go ahead and get those out. And my stencil. So the stencil package has 2 stencil designs. And I've labeled mine with a Sharpie marker. They are labeled on here, but I just find that it's easier to see. You can kind of see it if I'm tilting this a little bit. And I just grab my Sharpie marker so that I can tell which one is 1 and which one is 2. So I'm going to start with number 1. And let me see. You know what? I know that this is hard to see. Let me roll this back here for a second, and you may be able to see that shape, those shapes a little bit differently. So this is going to be 1 round or 1 layer of inking. This will be the next one. Then I'm going to move on to stencil number 2. I'm going to use this piece, and then I will finish up with the stem. Okay. So get my craft mat back in place here. And get my piece down. So again, starting with this one here, I'm going to simply align this, matching up some of the sections of my flower stencil and my stamped piece. So this is where you put it down and you do a little bit of wiggling on here. So here we go. Now, what I would also recommend is that you have a little bit of low-tack tape, either maybe a masking tape or a washi tape on hand to secure this in place, because you are going to be doing some blending on here. So it always helps to have a little bit of that. So I'm going to grab some washi tape and just tack that down. Now from my 3 ink colors, I'm going to start with the lightest color, which is the pink sand, and then gradually work my way up. So although this is not a layering stamp or a layering design like some of the other ones, it is going to be done in various colors. You can do the whole thing in 1 color if you want to. That also works. Okay, so the blending brushes that I'm using, also from Altenew, these nice big ones. I love these. Mine really need to be cleaned, but I'll do that later. So we may get some surprises here. So starting with the pink sand, I'm just going to ink this up. Pamela, your question was, will the Sharpie marker stay on the stencil after you clean it? Oh, you're an over-enthusiastic inker. I could consider myself to be over-enthusiastic inker as well. Yeah, I haven't had a problem with that marker staying on there. Probably will come off after time, but yeah, it shouldn't be going away too quickly. Generally, I clean my stencils with just a baby wipe or a damp cloth. So I don't really soak them in water. So you should be fine. Okay, so I'm just blending on the color, and I think you can see that coming through here. So wait until I remove my stencil. So that was with the pink sand or whatever mix I have on my brush. We will see. Pull this off. And there you can see. So I'm able to get that color just in the areas that are isolated by the stencil. Okay, so that's our first one. So that was this portion here. Then I'm going to come back with this one and position this guy down. Again, just kind of wiggling things around. It does help to stand when you do this, I find, but if I stand, I'll bonk my head on the camera. So I'm going to have to stay seating and do the best I can. Okay. And then again, just tack this down. And I will move to my next color, which is the Dusty Rose. Okay, don't let this shock you, but I am not going to clean my brush in between uses. So I tend to use brushes all within the same color family. So you can tell this one was kind of pinks and this dusty rose sort of color. I have another one that I use exclusively for greens. So that helps to keep things from getting too contaminated. I would never use like a dark brown on a blending brush that I was using for yellows, for example. Okay, maybe you want to add a little bit more here. Pop that back on. And lift this off. So I'm done with this stencil for now. I'm going to pop that over there. And again, you can see where that color has gone just in those areas. Now, you could stop here if you wanted to, or you could stop here and then just ink up the stem if you wanted, but I'm going to keep going. So I've got stencil number 2. And then this, I'm just going to pop this down. And again, just a little bit of wiggling. And then secure it down. And I'm going to come back with my third color, which is the Toasted Mauve or Mauve, depending on where you are in the world. Pronunciation might be a bit different. Okay, and here we come in with our final color. I love this color. However you pronounce it, I just think it's a beautiful color. I got some new inks from Altenew, so I'm very excited about using them. So if you're normally used to seeing me using Aqualicious all the time, I haven't used that for a while because I've got these other new ink sets. So Aqualicious will definitely be coming back, though, I'm sure. It's one of those colors that I just love and use it for lots of my flowers. Okay, so here we've got the completed colored in flower. So pretty. And really, it's just such a great way to be able to get all of those different colors, shades and colors in there. And also a really nice way to put your dye-based inks to use. So now I've just got the stem left to go, and I've got the stem on here. One thing, I don't know if you can see it really well, there is a little dippy bit on the stem, and that is going to go around this portion of the flower. So that's one area that you can kind of think about aligning. So again, you just pop this down, give it a wiggle until it's in the right place. And then, let's see, where can I take this? There we go. And then I'm going to use some of my greens for the stem. I'm going to be using the Silver Sage, and this is from the Frosted Foliage ink set, which has Silver Sage, it has Jade, it has Eucalyptus, and Forest Fern. Because I do so many flower stamps, I always love a good green ink pad. And Forest Glades has been my go-to green ink for a long time. So it's time that I branched out. No pun intended there. So this is my use only for greens blending brush, and I'll ink this up with that, the Silver Sage. And simply get that color down. Now this is a nice soft light green, so I can leave it soft and light, or I can put on a lot more pressure and do a couple of go rounds to really get that color on there. So it really depends on the look that you're going for. Okay. And it's important always to lift up your stencil, and do take care because, of course, I've got ink over here. I'm taking care not to put my hand or anything else on there. And there we go. So there you have a beautiful, soft, elegant floral design. Perfect for, with this curve on here, perfect for adding in that large be kind that could fit on there. Any of these smaller sentiments could fit on there. And of course, as I mentioned, I was incorporating the classic beauty with this. So I used one of these sentiments on there, which does really create a nice scripty look. So let me find my card again. So I kept things pretty simple with the rest of the card design. You could definitely jazz this up if you wanted to add in some sequins or some maybe flat back pearls or something like that. I just wrapped this with a little bit of hemp twine, have a little bow on here, and put the whole thing down onto a craft card blank. So to kind of keep in with the warm tones of the ink colors. So this is a really simple and easy way, a lot of fun, and a great way to combine those two elements, the stamp and the stencil, together for a simple card. Now, simple because you can keep it simple, or you can, of course, go into whatever different color combination you wanted to use. You could do lots of different things. So I just decided to keep it soft and simple for this one. So that is our first combination as well. Okay, so I'm going to scoot these things over and we can move over to a different look, which is using the same stenciling technique, some different colors, and skipping the stamp outline. I'm stamping from the other stamp set to get the sentiment on here, but there's no outline stamp on here. So let's take a look at how to do this. I'm first going to just clean off my stencils, just using a baby wipe, not a really wet one. I just want to get off most of the color on here because I'm going to swap over to some different ink colors. So let me move this card to one side and get my white cardstock. So I'm not using anything special. This is just a smooth white cardstock, and you don't need to do anything fancy with this. Okay, so again, grab my number one stencil, starting with the one on the left-hand side, the image on the left-hand side. And you can kind of position it wherever you want it to go, keeping in mind that the image itself is tall and narrow. So you just, depending on where you want the sentiment to go, if you want one on there, you'll see, sort of need to figure out your placement there. For the inks, for this one, I'm going to move to my other new ink pad set. And this is the Blue Mountains ink set. And this has water hyacinth, alpine aster, crystal violet, and indigo skies. So beautiful, beautiful blues. I'm going to, again, be using these top three here. I'll leave indigo skies for another project. Who doesn't love new inks? Just something irresistible about them. Okay, so let's try this. I'll pop this down here. Again, let me find my little tape bits. I reuse these a lot, which is just until they start to lose their stick. Okay. I'm going to switch over to some of my blending brushes for this. This one, you can tell this is what I use for my blues. So I just put a little piece of tape on there to remind myself what the colors are. And again, I'm going to start with the lightest color. So this is the water hyacinth. And just pick this up with my blending brush and apply it through. Same process as before, only without the outline to guide me, which is going to be okay. I'm saying that confidently. I'm really hoping it's going to be okay. It was okay when I did it the first time, so we'll see. It's always when you are on live on camera that some things happen. You know, the doorbell rings, The cat comes crashing in. I think that happened last time. I don't know. The lights go out. Who knows? It will only happen when you're live. Okay, I want to make sure I get all of these smaller elements. Okay. And again, that was with the water hyacinth. I'll pull this off. And you can see it doesn't look like much, but it's our start. So then moving over to this second part of our stencil, got the tape stubbornly stuck on here. And now what I need to do is, of course, align things. And this is the fun part. So what I'm going to do is start eyeballing top to bottom. Do I have a pointer tool here? Let me see. Yes, I have a pencil. I have an Easter Bunny pencil, so I'm going to use this as my pointer. So what I'm trying to do is align some of the elements down here at the bottom. Once I get that sort of figured out and I can see that this empty space is going to go next to this already stenciled space, kind of hold that down with my finger, and then I take a look up here and I see, okay, I've got this open space next to this already stenciled space. This is hooking on there, and this looks like it's curved around there. Okay, so I always give myself a little bit of time to figure out that I've got things in place. This is not something that you can slap together, unlike lots of my other techniques, which are definitely slap it together. Okay, and again, tap that down. I'm going to still use the same blending brush, and I'll use my Alpine Aster. Hold this down, and again, same technique. I'm using a pretty light touch at first and a circular motion here. With dye-based inks, you don't have to worry about them sort of squashing through the stencil, but with a detailed stencil, you do want to make sure that your brush is not catching on any of these finer tips and little points on the stencil. So a light touch, because you can always add more. Okay, Alpine Aster. And let's see how this one looks. Okay, so you can start to see it's coming along. Still looks a little bit funny. So this is where we move into stencil number 2. Now for this one, I'm just going to point out this little open space here is going to match in with this little open space on here. So I'm going to start with that and do any twisting and shifting that I may need to do. Okay. And once again, just tack that down. Where'd my other tape piece go? I'm losing my tape. And this one I'm going to color in with Crystal Violet. So again, I started with light, then I went to medium, and now I'm going to the darker of the 3 shades. Sherry says, I never knew how much I liked blue until I started seeing all of the Altenew blues. You know, that's very true, Sherry. I think you're exactly right. Altenew has a magic way with color. And I felt that way about their purples because I was never a big fan of purple, even though I'm currently wearing a sweater that's purple. But it's just not a color that I gravitate to. And yet, Altenew's purples, the lilacs, the lavenders, they're just really appealing to me. So it's funny too. And it's the same way with yellow. I'm not drawn to yellow very often. I'm thinking of like clothing or, home furnishings, that kind of thing. But when it comes to Altenew colors, I definitely would go for both of those sets. So it's interesting. Altenew definitely has a way with colors. Okay, so here is my stenciled flower. So you can start to see where those elements are coming together. It is missing the stem. As you can see, it's just got this little nubbins of a stem here. So again, we're going to come back with the stencil and add the stem. Now, because you already have this starter bit with the stem, it's awfully tempting, and I caught myself on this, to think that you align the stencil with this part of the stem. But what I want to point out, let me get my pointer tool here again, is that the main large stem here is actually positioned so that it's overlapping this little bit here. So when you place your stem down, you want to have it aligned with that little smaller piece. So let's take a look. The stencil, Kathy is asking, the stencil has everything on one page. The stencil is actually two stencil pieces. So there's stencil 1 and stencil 2. So it's two. I hope that answers your question. Hope that was the question you were asking. Okay, so pop this down here and find my tape again. It's running away. And then, there we go. Let's use some green. I may still have some green on my green brush, but I'm going to go ahead and add some more silver sage on here just because I have this out. Okay, and swish on this color. Now, because I want to keep that lovely soft look, I'm concentrating my color up here toward the top of the flower, and I'm going to let it kind of fade down here at the bottom. I love that this effect without the outline stamp just gives you such a pretty, soft, gentle look. Okay, and there we go. So there is our, oops, I'll move over. There is our stencil with our lovely soft green stem on there and all of those beautiful purpley blues. Just absolutely gorgeous. So let's take a look at the finished card. Again, I kept it super simple. And in this case, I also used one of the sentiments from the other stamp set from our Classic Beauty stamp set. And I just really liked all of these, wishing you a beautiful day, find the beauty in every day. You are a classic beauty. Your beauty shines from within. Really nice sentiments. And just stamp that using the obsidian black. Once again, you could jazz this up too. You could add in some more sequins or pearls or, I don't know, some kind of interesting background or some colored cardstock. I just went with a really simple blue and then once again put it onto a matte craft card base because I just thought that kind of lets everything be soft and gentle on here and really simple and easy to use. So yeah, I can't go wrong with blue. You guys like the softness of it. Yeah, super simple to do and a really nice way to utilize those stencils too. Altenew does have other stamp stencil layering combos like this. And I know I've got a couple of other ones. I'm going to go back and take a look and see if I can do this same technique with any of those other ones too. So I'll see if they look just as soft and pretty as this one is without that outline on there. So far we've got 2 looks with one collection, and you can see you can get some really lovely effects, but very different looks too. So also just pointing out that in this case, I've got the flower kind of going along the curve of the right-hand side, and I've got my sentiment just bumped right in here in between those petals. In this case, I've scooted this over a bit so that the sentiment will create some balance on the right-hand side. So you can do some swapping of wherever you want to put that stamp design. Of course, you can also angle the stamp so that it's just peeking up up off the corner. You could do something like that as well. If you want the whole image on there, though, you still do have some room to play. Okay, so I hope we are doing okay. Hopefully, I haven't missed any of the comments. I've been talking so much, I'm trying to read as I go, but I just can't multitask that way, unfortunately. Okay, let's move on to our third look. And this one is one that I also really like a lot. This is coloring in. And just like when we were kids in school, coloring in, well, art was one of my favorite topics when I was in school. And I just remember being in like probably second or third grade and just coloring, coloring, coloring. It was just lovely to do. And you can still do this as an adult. Um, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So I've stamped my flower image on here. Now I've stamped this with my obsidian black. And then what I did immediately after stamping it was put on some of the clear embossing powder. So this is Altenews clear powder. I had to reuse another jar after having an incident with embossing powder going everywhere. So it's their clear embossing powder combined with the obsidian pigment ink. This is something I always like to mention because when we think about doing any kind of heat embossing, often we think about using our embossing ink pad, which of course works perfectly, but any pigment ink is also going to be a perfect ink for using with embossing powder. And when you do black and clear, you'll get a really cool look. You'll get those raised edges, those nice glossy edges on there, and you've got the shine, but you don't have to worry about any stray little black embossing powder granules that I always seem to heat set everything just before I realize that there's like a couple little stray granules on there. So that's what I've done here. Now, I wasn't sure how we would be doing on time, so I have a piece where I've already done the embossing on here. So I'm going to pass that because I do want to make sure we get to our next card as well. So I've got this piece ready to go, and I'm going to skip my beautiful new dye-based inks, and instead I'm going to grab my watercolors. So Altenew has a couple of different watercolor sets. They have some beautiful metallic watercolors. They also have the watercolor essential set, which contains 12 half pans. If I flip this over, you can see all of the colors on here, all of our beautiful, gorgeous Altenew colors. And then we've got them in this really nice pan. Now, you can tell I love my Sharpie and I love to label things because I've got all of my color names in here as well. And the reason for that, this is really nice about this set. All of these little pans will pop out. So this one, for example, is the jet black. And so what I've done on here is I've labeled that's where the jet black goes. It goes right there. This is the puffy heart. I can kind of figure out where those different colors are, which just to me makes everything a lot simpler because sometimes the colors, especially with some of the reds or some of the darker colors, it's hard to tell just at a quick glance what exactly those colors are. So I've labeled on the back here. So this is EM for emerald. So I've got M on here so that I can remember that. Then I can use my box as well to just kind of remind me what those colors look like before I get into painting. I do recommend creating a swatch sheet for your watercolors or any of your paint sets. Really comes in handy. I know I have one for this paint set and I could not find it. So didn't have time to make up a new one, but that it's always a good tip to have on hand. So I'm going to be working with my various colors here. Now in this case, I guess you can't keep me away from those beautiful blues. So I was just using some of the blues in here, blues and greens, to create this effect. But I thought let's do a different color this time. Let's try something else. So The nice thing about the heat embossing on here is that those raised edges will create kind of a resist effect. And it means that I don't have to worry about my ink smearing or blurring or anything like that. So that it gives me a little bit of a safety net. Okay, I'm going to use my water brush. Normally with a water brush, you would open the barrel. Now, here's the other thing. Generally, when you get these, doesn't matter what brand of water brush it is, you think to twist it this way to open it up. You twist it the other way. It's kind of counterintuitive. And normally what you would do is twist this all the way off and fill that barrel with water, put it back on, twisting counterintuitively. And then as you're painting, you gently squeeze the base of the barrel and the water will come out. I personally really don't use them that way. It's just not a habit I have. I just use them as a paintbrush. But what I like about them, as opposed to, I've got one here, a wooden handle paintbrush, is that because they're plastic, they tend not to split and crack, especially if you're hard on your brushes. I have a lot of brushes in various states of disrepair. I'm pretty hard on my paintbrushes. So this is just a really easy way for me to maintain these and they stay with me longer. So if you're wondering about filling the barrel, you can if you want to, but you don't have to. I don't. And I do get my brush wet, so I've got a cup of semi-clean water here. And let's see, I was doing the blues and greens. Let's take a look at some of the reds here. So I'm going to dip into warm sunshine. Now you can also use this side of your palette to mix colors if you want to. So you've got a lot of space for that. You can also mix them on your craft mat too. Pick this up, add a little bit more here. Really rich, beautiful colors. If you are looking for a watercolor set, I've used many watercolor sets from lots of different manufacturers over my 20 years of crafting, and for everything from really inexpensive to more expensive than I could probably have justified. And I have found that Altenews are so top. I mean, just a really great quality, good price, good quality. And that's what I have come to expect from Altenew. Probably you guys have too. And it's just nice to know that you can invest in something. I mean, a watercolor set, it's a big set. This one's got the 12 colors in here. So you don't want to buy something and then discover that you've made a mistake. And with all the things that I have from Altenew, I'm just always really happy with the level of quality, which means that a lot of the creative people in my family get a lot of Altenew product as gifts. So if I feel confident enough to give it to people that I love and respect and want to enjoy their crafting time, then it's a good endorsement. Okay, so this is just with the warm sunshine on here. Now I can add a little bit more color on here too. I can just pop over next to the crimson, and let's pick up a little crimson here. I'm going to make this pretty watery. And then just add this in here as well for a little bit of depth. Oh, I should say I've stamped this onto watercolor cardstock. So I have something that will accept a watery medium. That's going to be important. Your cardstock is always really important. I know that you guys have all discovered this. We've all stamped on something, on some kind of cardstock or paper that we thought would work and it doesn't. Or we tried painting or coloring in on something and it just doesn't quite go. The cardstock and the surface that we work on is pretty important. Okay, and I'm not being especially artistic in this case. I'm just putting that color down, layering it up. So I've started with my lighter color And then I'll just work up from there. If you're ever unsure of where to start when you're painting or coloring in, a yellow is a really good place to start because it creates kind of a glow effect behind your other colors, whatever you're adding on top. Takes away the initial white and just gives you a nice soft glow. Okay. I could be doing this for a long time. I'm right back in second grade. Isn't that the nice part about being creative? Doing any kind of coloring work is that you can really get lost in it. So I have to remind myself, I'm not by myself. I'm not alone, which is good. Okay. So there I've got my two really beautiful colors. This is all I'm going to do on those flowers. But then I do want to rinse off my brush and dry it off a little bit, and then come in with some green. So this is my forest glades here. Um, I've scribbled my abbreviation on there. So let's do our forest glades stem. That's too wet. And then we will be done with this. So once again, you can add as much or as little to this as you want. So you could definitely stamp in a couple more of the bluebells. You could add in some more spattering. If you've watched any of my lives before, you know that I love to do some splattering with ink. I thought, ooh, this time just restrain yourself, Sarah. So I did not do any spattering, but you could definitely do that. It would be really pretty on here too. So this is a really simple and easy way to use the stamp in combination with embossing powder if you want to. I just find that it really creates a nice raised edge around that image, gives it a little bit of shine too, and helps to keep any of the lines from smearing or blurring or anything like that. So once I have that dry, and I would let it air dry. You can also give it a quick little zip zap with your heat tool if you want to. Then I've added my stamped sentiment. Now, one thing with stamping detail stamps, like something with kind of a small font on here onto cardstock or onto watercolor cardstock, is that you may want to um, put it on your MISTI rather than doing it with just a block, because you may want to do it a couple of times depending on how textured your cardstock is. So I opt for something kind of smooth on here. I've also added some sequins, and these are from the antique gold sequins bottle jar, which I use a lot, and I don't look like I've made much of a dent in here. So those go a long way as well. And I've just tacked on a couple here, and I used a little bit of white glue to do that. So again, keeping things really simple. I've just mounted this up onto some blue cardstock, and then onto kind of a neutral gray, beige, a grayish color, and then on my white card base. So once again, spruce it up as much as you want to, or keep it simple too. But again, you can get some really different looks with this, just depending on the colors you're using. So hang on, where can I put this guy so we don't put my hand in it? Okay, so that's our third card. So far we've been doing watercoloring, stenciling without the stamp, and our stamp stenciling. So let's look at our final card. I got a couple of tips for this. So this is giving us a completely different look. And in this case, I'm not using that beautiful flower at all. I thought I'm going to work in that Be Kind. And hopefully this will also address some of the questions about where to use the Be Kind sentiment. So in this case, I've got, in a world where you can be anything, be kind, it matters. And this, when I was making this card, I was thinking of my volunteer group and just thinking of all of the ladies that were working so hard. We were all getting together last Friday to do some sorting of clothing donations for a local charity. And I thought, these women are so impressive because they're working so hard, dedicating half their day to sorting through clothing donations. And I just thought, when we're done with this round of volunteer work, it would be really nice to send out some cards that are thanking them for their kindness and their generosity. So this is kind of what I was, it's like my test drive for some of the cards that I'll be sending out to these ladies. So again, really simple, really easy to do. I've got a watercolored background on here. Again, using my watercolor set. So I had it out. So I thought, well, let's put this to use. Now, in this case, I'm not using my water brush. And the reason for that, I'll show you the tip on here. In this case, I am going to be using my wooden paintbrush. This is a number 16. So you can see the number on here that's always going to be on the barrel of the brush. And this is a flat brush. And this is one that you can get at the craft store, art supply store, stationery store. It's not an especially fancy brush, but it's flat, meaning that this part will be narrow and this part will be wide. So in contrast to this water brush with the finer tip, this one is going to be a lot nicer for creating a wash effect like I've got on here. So pop this aside. And again, working onto my watercolor paper. What colors did I use here? Okay, I was using the Warm Sunshine. Then I used Crimson. Okay, I was going down the line like this. Rubelite. There's Rubelite. And then Puffy Heart. So I'm going to start with my lightest color, which is the Warm Sunshine. I do like this color quite a lot in all of its iterations from old to new. So inks, water brush markers, you name it. And I'm just going to pop this down here. So a couple of quick strokes, and I've got a little swatch of that color. I'm going to dab off my brush and move over to Crimson. I don't want it to be too stark. And blending from the Warm Sunshine, I'm just going to move over and add a bit of that crimson on there. Then repeat the process with the Rubelite and add this in here. Let's get a little bit more. And then over to the Puffy Heart, which is sort of a pinky purple. Let's get a little bit more there. So I'm not worried about measuring anything. I'm not worried about creating perfect space. I really just want to have a watery wash of that beautiful color. It's just going to be hanging out in the background. So then what I want to do is let this dry really thoroughly. Again, you can speed up the dry time using a heat tool. Because this is pretty watery, just hesitate to aim the heat tool right at it because sometimes your watery medium can kind of go lots of places. So you may want to, in that case, let it get a little bit dry and then finish it off with a quick zip zap of your heat tool just to speed that along. So once that is dry, then I can add my sentiments in here, and everything is glued on top, so I'm not stamping on top of this. So as you can see, I've stamped these using the black onto little snippets of white cardstock. So this is from my fairly giant pile of little white snippets of white cardstock. Maybe you guys have this as well, where it's just like these little tiny pieces. And of course I save them because they always work well for little things like this. So I've stamped that. I've trimmed it at an angle just to add a little bit of finishing touch on there. And then I've added my die cut Be Kind. So I do have a tip for this. I'm going to move this over so I don't put my hand in it. I'm done with my watercolor paints. Oh, a tip for this. And you may notice that I've got some little puddles of water in here. So this is not completely dry. When you're done with your watercolors, don't close up the lid and put it away for storage until the paints are dry. Otherwise, it can kind of be, a wet pan of paint in a fairly airtight metal box, and you may find, I don't know, maybe some surprises when you open it up the next time, depending on how long you go in between uses. So do let this air dry before you close it all up and put it away. Okay, I'm going to move that over there. And I'm going to bring in and show you the dies for this. So again, you've got two pieces in here. You've got your outline and you've got your detail. So you can see here, one's a bit thicker and then one's the detail. So what you'll do is die cut two of these different pieces. So here I've die cut the piece from black, and then the top part will be in two pieces. So be and kind. I know this is hard to see. We'll do it like that. So the nice thing about this is that you can kind of move this around. You can have it, one being right next to the other if you want to. You could even just use the word kind. That maybe, you could have thank you for being so kind, that kind of thing. So in this case, they have them layered one on top of the other. Now, just my tip for gluing things together, because I always get questions about this, especially when things are really fine detail like this. Like, do you use it? You can't use a double-sided, tape on here. How do you do this? How do you glue it so that you don't have glue sort of squirting out on the sides? So what I do is use my double-sided tape. So I'll take a piece of white cardstock for this, grab my detail die, pop this on here. Hang on, I have to move some of my pieces out of the way. Of course, secure this down with a little bit of low-tack tape. And I've trimmed around the outside edge of this so that I have a fairly small piece of cardstock. It's trimmed quite close to the size of the die. I'm going to flip it over, take some of my double-sided tape. Let's see, my scissors. And then I'm going to cut a piece and place it on the back. I'm going to cut a couple of pieces and put them on the back. So I just need a small piece for up here. You can feel where the die is. So I've got my double-sided tape on here. The liner is still on. This is secured in place. Run this through my die cutting machine. And then when the pieces come out, you've got essentially a sticker. So then you can pull off the liner with that double-sided tape. And it's just a little bit easier to get into position. It just saves you from having to deal with wet glue, which can go lots of different places. So then you can place this on here and be ready to go. So I've got this in two styles. Now you can see I've got the white on black, or you could do black on white. And then again, just adding in those little elements here and some more of those sequins, and you've got a card ready to go, ready to thank somebody for their volunteer service sorting used clothing, which was a big job. And this is definitely something that a volunteer or somebody who's just done something kind and thoughtful would probably really appreciate. So this is our fourth way to use this one collection. So whether you're just using the die itself, or you're using the stencil and the stamp together, or the stencil without the stamp, or you're going to bring in your watercolors. By the way, you could also use those water brush markers that Altenew has. Those would be gorgeous. Lots of different ways to color in an outline stamp. So take a look around in your stash. I know you guys probably have lots of different things that you can put to use as well. So I am going to change up my camera here for a second, and we can see each other again. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to run through the supplies, which are scattered everywhere by now, just as a reminder of what we've been working with today. So Our one collection starts with the Always Be Kind set, with our beautiful bluebell, our large Be Kind, and all of our fun little sentiments that go in there too. We also have our stencil. I'll just show you the package. Our stencils, oh, they're a little bit inky. They will go for a wash. We'll go for a bath tonight. Those can also go along really nicely. Oh, I should also point out on the stamp set, the technique with this stenciling only, I thought I was really being really clever until I realized, oh, guess what? They've got a great example of this on the package itself. So great minds think alike, I suppose. So always remember they've got in the packaging, they always have project ideas too. And actually, have a look at this one. That looks really cool too. No coloring whatsoever. Looks really great. And so we were playing with that. Also, the Be Kind die set had that, as well as, hang on, let me find it, let me grab it. Our Classic Beauty. This is the one that I was using for those gorgeous sentiments on here. And I'm sure I will pull this out again later and play with the layered florals on there too. Aside from that, I've got the ink combos that I was working with, those three beautiful new inks, my Obsidian Black and the Watercolor Essentials, or whatever you like to use to color in your outline stamp. So lots and lots of different options. One collection, 4 ways. I think you could probably come up with 100 ways with this collection, and I'm sure that you guys will. So a very big thank you to everybody for joining me tonight. Thank you so much, Hannah, for being our moderator. And hopefully I haven't missed any of the comments. I will always go back the next day and just double check to make sure nobody asked a question that I didn't notice. So hopefully I've answered any of your questions. We have another minute or so before I will sign off. So if you haven't already shared tonight's live while we're live, now's your last chance to do it. And Hannah will be in charge of finding somebody to get a $15 gift certificate to the Alta News store. I'm sure you can think of lots of fun things that you would like. I know I can. I've always got a running list. And I hope that you all have a wonderful week ahead. If you're celebrating Easter this coming weekend, I hope you have a lovely time. I hope all of your chocolate bunnies are solid, not hollow. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for mine. And wishing you all just the very best for the rest of your day and the rest of your week. I'll see you, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks again for another live. And I've already got my thinking cap on for some fun techniques and projects that we can look at there. So a very big thank you again to everybody, and do take care. And I will see you again very soon.